Hello, and welcome to another edition of B.T.F.O, or Brief Thoughts for Others. Today, continuing our Halloween theme, I want to talk about The Last Voyage of the Demeter, another Dracula-centric film that came out last year. And oddly enough, this one, I'm trying to remember. It was August. I think that it came out early August, which is closer to Halloween than Renfield, but it feels like you should have released this in October. Now, this one did have a reason, being that the release date lined up with the date in the book of the Demeter journal entry, and so that's kind of neat. But at the same time, as much as I do think that's neat, I do think that they should have considered that this is still a movie that they still needed to make a profit on, because I do think it's kind of unfortunate that we won't really get a sequel to this, because of the fact that I'm pretty sure it didn't make money. And it's unfortunate because I quite like Last Voyage of the Demeter. It definitely takes some liberties with the story, and I think by far the worst part would have to be the main character, Clemens, which is weird because I don't necessarily hate him, but he suffers a lot from main character syndrome, where he's just sort of the cool protagonist that is right about everything, and people don't listen to him. You should try to be more like Clemens, and it's okay, that's really lame. I wish you would have done more with it. They do a little bit with him by having him be the skeptic character, but even by the end of the film, because throughout the film he basically tries to say that Dracula has to be science-based somehow, which one thing that I do actually like about the film is that it's very clear that no, we're not going that approach. Dracula is a straight up monster. It's not a case of oh, he's he's actually just got this illness or whatever. No, he's a straight up demon type thing. And Dracula is probably the best part of it. I really like that it's a more monstrous looking Dracula. Very much, especially at the end when you see him more as a person with clothes on. He's a lot more of a Nosferatu type Dracula, which I really like, because they use CG for most of Dracula's appearance, but honestly it looks pretty good, which I did quite like, and I think some of it is quite practical. I remember seeing some things about that, but Dracula throughout it is very sadistic in how he acts, where you don't actually see Dracula for a lot of the movie, but the actions that Dracula takes, it's really neat to go through the whole movie knowing that Dracula basically knows that he's in control of this boat, and so he kind of does things in the way that he wants them to go down, and then ultimately it ends with him allowing Clemens to live, but like he invades Clemens' mind so he can basically make him like more paranoid and stuff, while Clemens tries to hunt him down, which I think would be really neat for a sequel. It would be kind of neat for Clemens to like run into Van Helsing, but I do think you'd have to build more into Clemens' character, because for all intents and purposes, Clemens in this movie basically is Van Helsing. Like, he does the blood transfusion stuff, like he's their medical doctor, and it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I guess you can do that, but it just feels a little weird where, like, if they were to make a sequel, you'd have Clemens and Van Helsing both kind of, like, fulfilling the same role. I suppose you could have Van Helsing be more, like, spiritually minded, be more into, like, the actual, like, monster lore of a vampire, whereas Clemens would still be very, like, science-based about it. And so you could have an interesting conflict there, but it would probably the most interesting thing that you could do with Clemens is, like, actually have him, like, just strung up and, like, constantly tortured by Dracula, and, like, have Dracula basically just be trying to, like, break his spirit the whole time. But as far as this movie goes, there's a few of the characters, especially the ones that get killed off early on, that aren't super well developed. There is one part where someone throws a slur towards Clemens because he's black. I believe they call him, I think it's Darky at one point, and it's like, okay, like, I guess that works, but it is a bit of like, oh, I mean, we are in the 1800s, and, like, you know, your movie is rated R. Feels like there might be another word that he might have called Clemens that might have not been so soft, because I don't know, it feels like for the time period that would be a weird, like, oh, does he actually hate me because of my skin, or is he, like, just making a joke? But which is weird because the film doesn't pull a lot of punches, where this is one of the few horror movies that, like, actually commits to straight up killing a child. And it's like, good. I'm glad. I don't like it when movies try to, like, sanitize themselves, especially when they're R-rated. It's like, look, I know I'm watching a movie. Like, you know that I know that I'm watching a movie. We all should be adults watching this movie. So, like, who the hell cares if, like, the fictional child dies? Like, oh no. But yeah, I don't know. I would recommend Last Voyage of the Demeter. I think it's a neat little way to tell a portion of the Dracula story, and it's unfortunate that it didn't make money, because I think it would actually be really cool to get potentially, like, a trilogy that tells the Dracula story in full. You know, you could have a prequel to Last Voyage of the Demeter that's about Harker or Renfield, depending on how you wanted to go with it, going to meet Dracula, and then you could have a sequel to Last Voyage of the Demeter that is the end of the Dracula story in London. And those could all be really good, and you could have a lot of character development in there. And I'm fine with them creating their own original characters, but I just wish they'd have more character than Clemens. Because I like the actor, and the performance is pretty good, and the little moments of character that they do give Clemens are good. You just, you wish they did more with him, rather than for most of the movie he's just I'm the science guy, and like, here's what we're gonna do because this is the rational thing, and like, there you go, I'm smart. It's never really challenged of like, oh, sure, maybe that was the rational thing to do, but like, you were wrong, so we're not gonna listen to you this next time. But yeah, I'd recommend it. So yeah, those are my brief thoughts on Last Voyage of the Demeter. I hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.